My granddaughter Lily died in the fire that destroyed our home last night. This morning, my sister Carol stood in my little borrowed kitchenette, some papers in her hand. The land is unstable now, Ellen, she said carefully. We must sell the whole property to the Lakeside Resort Group by Sunday night, or their offer is gone. She placed the documents by my toast. The top page showed a picture of a hotel where our porch used to be. Lily was just 12. She had been staying with me for the summer. Her funeral is planned for Monday. Carol pointed to a signature line. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy, all wrong. I put it down. I need to see that report myself. I need to talk to the fire investigator. Don't be difficult. She sighed with that familiar impatience. This is the only sensible choice. That old house was a money pit. This is a fresh start. She talked about fresh starts, while Lily's backpack still sat by my temporary door. After she left, I drove to the county building. The clerk at the records desk was a young man who looked tired. I asked for the fire marshal's findings. He typed, then frowned. That file is sealed for now, ma'am. It's an active case. You should hear something next week. Next week was too late. Carol's deadline was tomorrow. I walked out into the hallway, my shoes squeaking. I needed to stall the sale. That meant facing my sister's pressure and maybe losing the land for good. As I reached my car, my phone rang. It was Carol. Ellen, the resort's lawyer, just called. They need both our signatures by 5 tomorrow, or they'll look at the land next door instead. We'll lose everything. Her voice was full of fake concern. I said I understood and hung up. I didn't go back to the motel. I drove to the blackened remains of my home. Yellow tape was strung around the charred timbers. The smell of wet ash hung in the air. I stood there in the quiet until I noticed something. A clear path led through the debris to the old garden shed, which looked untouched. The shed door stood ajar. Inside, next to the old lawnmower, were 2 shiny red plastic cans. They were labeled gasoline. I never keep gasoline in that shed. Ever. I didn't touch them. I stepped back, my breath catching. There were footprints, smaller than a work boot, leading from the shed toward the back of the house. I took out my phone and took pictures, my hands surprisingly steady. As I walked back to my car, a sheriff's cruiser came up the driveway. A deputy got out. Ma'am, we had a report of someone trespassing here. You're the owner? I said I was. He glanced past me at the ruins. Your sister, Carol Evans, called it in. She mentioned being worried about looters. You should probably clear out for your own safety. He tipped his hat, got back in his car, and drove off, leaving me alone in the dusk. Carol was having me watched. The motel room was dark when I got back. I sent the photos of the gas cans from my phone to my lawyer, Martin, with a quick note about Carol's deadline. Just as I hit send, there was a knock. It was Carol, holding a bakery box with a too-sweet smile. I brought you pie. She came right in, her eyes taking in the room and my laptop. Have you decided about the offer? She asked, setting the box down. This is for the best. You could get a nice condo, see the world. My world was Lily, I said. I don't want a condo. Her smile faded. This is business, Ellen. The estate is half mine. I want my share. It always came back to that old jealousy, from when I stayed in the house with our parents and raised my family. The investigation isn't finished, I said. Selling now seems suspicious. Her face went blank. Suspicious of what? It was faulty wiring. A tragedy. She said it like she'd rehearsed it. Delaying only costs us money. I opened the box. Cherry pie. Lily's favourite. The cruelty of it stole my breath. I closed the lid. I won't sign anything until after the funeral. Her calm snapped. You stubborn woman. You've always held me back. She leaned close, her voice a harsh whisper. Sign the papers tomorrow, or you'll regret it. Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her. The threat lingered. I had to protect myself. I opened my laptop. My only lead was those gas cans. I needed to know where they came from. The shed was always locked, and I had the only key. Carol must have had a copy made. Early the next morning, before meeting the notary, I drove to the big home improvement store. I showed a clerk the picture on my phone. My sister bought these but lost the receipt. Can you look it up? He was nice, but said without a receipt, it was impossible. I walked to the aisle where the cans were sold. Staring at the red containers, I noticed a small sign. Limit 2 per customer. An idea came. I went back and asked for the manager, a serious woman around my daughter's age. I explained about the fire investigation and asked if security footage might show a woman like Carol buying 2 cans. I can't show you the footage, she said. But if the police ask, we'll cooperate. It was a start. In the parking lot, I called the fire marshal. Someone answered. I told them about the gas cans. The voice grew attentive. You left them there? Good. Don't go back. We'll send someone. They took my statement and Carol's name. It felt like a small win. But as I ended the call, I saw a familiar car 2 rows over. Carol was behind the wheel, just watching me. She didn't wave. She stared, then started her car and drove away. She knew what I was doing. The meeting with the notary was in a bland office. Carol was already there, perfectly composed, talking with the resort's lawyer. She introduced me, her hand on my arm. My sister is still grieving, but we're ready. I sat. The documents were before me. The notary prepared her stamp. The lawyer explained the terms. A large lump sum, split equally, closing in 30 days. It would set Carol up for life and leave me rootless. Before I sign, I said, putting my pen down, I have a question. The fire marshal is reopening the investigation. Won't that affect things? The room chilled. Carol's smile froze. What new evidence? The lawyer asked. I can't say, but they've asked me not to disturb the property. I looked at Carol. A faint tremor touched her lip. This is the first I'm hearing of this, the lawyer said, frowning at her. It's a formality, I'm sure, Carol said, her voice strained. Ellen, please, this is our future. My future is finding out what happened to my granddaughter, I said quietly. I stood. I won't sign until the investigation is complete. I gathered my purse. Carol shot up. You're making a mistake. They'll withdraw the offer. Then let them, I said, and walked out. I had delayed the sale, but the pressure was immense. In the parking lot, Carol caught up. You think you're so clever, she hissed. You've always looked down on me. I have resources too. You'll see. She marched back inside. I drove to the library, my heart pounding. I needed to understand. On a public computer, I searched property records. Our parents' will left the house and land to both of us. I had life tenancy. If the property was sold, Carol got half. But if it was destroyed, the insurance payout would be split. The land itself was still jointly owned. She couldn't sell without my signature, and I couldn't sell without hers. A stalemate. But Carol had a buyer who wanted the land. The house was gone. She only needed my signature. My refusal was the only barrier. As I printed the documents, my phone buzzed. It was Adult Protective Services. A concerned neighbour had reported possible self-neglect in an elderly widow after the fire. They asked to schedule a wellness visit. My blood ran cold. Carol's resource, painting me as an unfit, grieving old woman. If they deemed me incompetent, a conservatorship could be established. And who would they appoint? My only close relative, Carol. I agreed to the visit, my voice steady, and hung up. This was her counter-move. I went straight to my lawyer Martin's office. His secretary saw my face and showed me in. Martin listened. A guardianship petition is a serious threat, Ellen, but it's a bluff if you're clearly competent. The APS visit is key. Be calm and organized. Show them you're in control. Are your finances in order? I nodded. What about the fire investigation? I'll call the marshal's office. The gasoline cans are significant. If they find evidence of arson, and if it points to Carol, he let the sentence hang. For now, we play defense. Document every interaction with her. I left feeling slightly armored, but as I walked to my car, I saw my old neighbor, Mr. Henderson, across the street. He crossed over when he saw me. Ellen, he said, his voice low. Saw you at the place. Saw your sister out there too, a week before the fire, late at night. Had a man with her, carrying something. He looked around nervously. Didn't think much of it then. But with your granddaughter, I thought you should know. He patted my arm and walked away quickly. The APS worker, Gina, arrived at 10. I'd prepared my papers and medications neatly. We talked. She asked about the fire, Lily, and my plans. I was honest about my grief, but showed her I was managing. I mentioned the disagreement with Carol over the land, but not my suspicions. Gina took notes. The report mentioned concerns after the trauma, she said gently. I'm heartbroken, not confused, I told her. She seemed satisfied. As she left, she said, You seem capable. These referrals often come from family with competing interests. Be careful. I felt relieved, but knew Carol's pressure would grow. Next, I called the fire marshal. Investigator Grady was brief. We retrieved the cans. It's a criminal investigation. Expect a call from the sheriff. Later, a detective did call to set up an interview. That evening, Carol phoned, her tone soft. Ellen, please sign. I'll give you an extra 20,000. Let's end this. The fire marshal says it's criminal now, I said. They found the cans. There was a sharp silence. That's terrible, but it doesn't change selling the land. Think about my offer. She hung up. Her fear was clear. The next day, I met Detective Walsh. He asked about Carol, our arguments, and the fire. I told him everything, including what Mr. Henderson saw. We're following leads, he said. Prints are being processed. Your sister has hired a good attorney. What does that mean? She's preparing for a fight. Avoid contact. I left feeling hopeful, yet terrified. For peace, I drove to the lakeshore. A man in a baseball cap sat on my bench. Without looking at me, he spoke low. Your sister hired Derek Mills. He has a record for petty arson. He's been bragging about a lake job. Henderson sent me. Watch your back. He walked away. I sat frozen. Carol hadn't acted alone, and Mr. Henderson was quietly helping. Dazed, I drove back to the motel to tell the detective. A note was under my wiper. It read in block letters, Stop digging. Accidents happen. The lot was empty. I took a picture with my phone, then carefully peeled it off with a tissue. I didn't go inside. I drove straight back to the sheriff's substation, that note on the passenger seat like a live snake. Detective Walsh took the note as evidence. This is serious, he said. It's witness intimidation. We'll have a patrol car near your motel tonight. He asked if I had somewhere else to stay. I thought of my friend Barbara in the next town, but I didn't want to bring trouble to her door. I said the motel was fine with the extra watch. He told me they'd found fingerprints on a gasoline can belonging to a man named Derek Mills and were picking him up. If he talked, he might link this to my sister Carol. I went back to the motel. The sheriff's cruiser was parked outside, which gave me a little comfort. Inside, I packed a small bag just in case. Now I just had to get through the night and hope Mills would speak up. Carol's pressure had jumped from legal threats to something criminal. I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was a man's rough, slurred voice. "Tell the old lady to back off, or the next fire won't be empty." I forwarded it to Detective Walsh right away. He called back an hour later. "We got him. Mills was drunk in a bar, yelling about how some rich lady set him up. He's in custody. We're bringing your sister in for questioning in the morning." He added, "You did the right thing by coming to us." I hung up, feeling an emptiness where relief should have been. They had Mills. They were going after Carol. Justice for my granddaughter Lily was in sight, but it would shatter what was left of our family. At dawn, I made a pot of coffee and sat by the window. The cruiser was still there. At 8 a.m., Carol's lawyer called. "Mrs. Evans, Carol is at the sheriff's office. I strongly advise you to drop this. A family dispute shouldn't become a criminal matter. We'll give you 70% of the land if you call it a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said, my voice firm. "A child is dead. Talk to the detective." I ended the call. I knew Carol was desperate. I dressed and drove to the sheriff's office. I didn't go in. I parked across the street. After half an hour, I saw Carol walk out with her lawyer. Her head was high, but she hurried to her car and drove off. She hadn't been arrested. Disappointment washed over me. Had Mills not named her? I was about to leave when Detective Walsh came out, spotted my car, and walked over. I rolled down the window. "Mills is talking," he said quietly. "He claims a woman matching Carol's description hired him to scare you with a small controlled fire on the porch. The gas can spilled, and it got out of hand. He says he never meant for anyone to be inside." I felt sick. Lily came home early from a friend's to nap in the attic. He didn't check. Walsh's jaw tightened. "We have his statement and cash withdrawals from Carol's account that match the amount he named. It's circumstantial but strong. We're presenting it to the DA today. We'll likely charge her with conspiracy and manslaughter." He looked at me kindly. "It will be a long process, but we have her." I nodded, unable to speak. He patted my car door and went back inside. I sat there, watching the traffic. Carol's dream for a hotel was ashes. So was my home. So was my granddaughter. The victory ahead felt hollow. I started the car and drove to the lake, needing to see something peaceful and whole. The district attorney's office called me in 2 days later. Carol had been formally charged. I sat in a small, plain room with a victim's advocate and Adia Ruiz. She laid it out: conspiracy to commit arson, involuntary manslaughter, and intimidation of a witness. "We have a strong case, Mrs. Evans. Derek Mills has accepted a plea deal in exchange for his testimony against your sister." I had to be a witness, to tell the truth about Carol's pressure, the deadline, the threats. "The defense will try to paint this as a tragic accident during a property dispute between sisters," Ada Ruiz warned. "They'll say you're vengeful. We need you calm and factual." I agreed. As I stood to leave, she added, "The resort company has withdrawn their offer. The land is yours, free and clear." It was a piece of news that should have meant something. It just felt like dirt and memories. I drove to what was left of the house. The yellow tape was gone. The gas cans were evidence. I walked to the old oak tree, its leaves still green. I sat on the roots, where Lily used to read. The silence was different now, not peaceful, just empty. My phone buzzed. It was Carol's lawyer. "Ellen, Carol would like to see you. She's in county lockup. She says it's important." I said I'd think about it. He pressed. "She's your sister. She's facing decades." "Lily faced forever?" I said, and hung up. The request gnawed at me. Was it a trap, a final manipulation? I didn't trust her, but a part of me, the big sister part forged decades ago, felt a tug. I called my lawyer, Martin. He advised against it. "Anything she says to you could be twisted. Let the process work." I tried to listen. I went to Barbara's for dinner that night. Her grandkids were there, laughing. The sound was like a physical ache. I excused myself early. In my motel room, I stared at the ceiling. Carol wanted to see me. The pressure wasn't about money or land anymore. It was about family, a ghost from the past. The next morning, I made a decision. I called the county jail and arranged a visitation for the afternoon. I didn't tell my lawyer. This was something I had to do for myself, to look her in the eye one last time before the trial made it a spectacle. I needed to see if there was anything left of the girl I'd shared a room with. The visiting room was cold, all hard surfaces and the smell of bleach. I sat on one side of the thick plexiglass. When they brought Carol in, wearing a jumpsuit, she looked small and old. She sat down slowly. We picked up the phones. Her first words were not an apology. "You won," she said, her voice flat. "You always do." I stared at my sister through the scratched glass of the prison visiting room. "This wasn't a game, Carol. Lily is dead." She looked away, her jaw tight. "I didn't mean for that. Mills was an idiot. It was supposed to be a small fire on the porch, just enough to scare you into selling." Hearing her say it so casually made my stomach turn. "You wanted to scare me? With fire? You were always so attached to that old house." She snapped, her eyes flashing with the old envy. "Mom and Dad's favorite. You got to stay. I had to leave. I deserved my share." "You got half of everything," I said, my grip tight on the phone. "You just wanted it all." "And now neither of us has anything," she hissed. "Listen, drop the charges. Tell them it was an accident. I'll sign over my half of the land to you, free and clear. You'll own everything. Just let me out of here." There it was, my freedom and complete ownership for hers. A selfish trade. I felt a cold clarity. "No." Her face crumpled into rage. "You self-righteous witch. You'd rather see me rot?" "It's about Lily," I said slowly. "You don't even say her name." I stood to leave. "Ellen, wait." Her voice cracked with panic. For a second, I saw the little sister who had nightmares. Then it was gone. "If you do this, I'll tell them you were in on it, that you wanted the insurance money too. It'll be my word against yours." I leaned down. "You do that, Carol. Tell them whatever you want. The gasoline cans, the bank withdrawals, they all point to you. I have nothing to hide." I hung up and walked out. Back at the motel, I felt drained, but resolved. I called Adia Ruiz and told her about the bribe and threat. She wasn't surprised. "Common tactic. We'll add witness tampering. You did the right thing." The right thing felt hollow. I packed my suitcase. I couldn't stay any longer. I needed to decide about the land. I couldn't rebuild the house, not with those memories. But I couldn't let Carol's hotel scheme happen, even from jail. I had an idea. It felt like quiet justice. I drove to the town hall and asked for the planning office. I inquired about donating land for public use. The clerk was helpful. If it's waterfront, the county might want a small park or a conservation easement. It would be a legacy. A park. A place for children to play and families to have picnics. A place where Lily's name could be on a simple plaque. I took the paperwork. It would mean no money for me, but it would protect the land forever and end Carol's hotel plan. I filled out the forms in the library, the pen moving surely. This was my answer, not for revenge, but for peace. Filing the donation paperwork with the county was a quiet affair. The clerk stamped the forms and said it would go before the council for approval, which was usually a formality for a gift. As I left, I felt a weight lift. The land would have a purpose again. Carol's trial date was set. My role was to wait and be ready to testify. I moved out of the motel and rented a small, sunny apartment in town. It had a view of the lake in the distance. I brought Lily's backpack and placed it on a shelf. It wasn't hiding it away. It was keeping her close. A week later, a process server found me. It was a civil lawsuit. Carol was suing me from jail, claiming I had exerted undue influence on our parents and that she was entitled to 75% of the property's value, which she estimated at a staggering sum. Her lawyer was using the criminal charges as a delay tactic, but the civil suit was a new attack, designed to tie up the land and drain my resources. Martin was furious. It's frivolous, but we have to respond. It will cost you to defend it. Carol was using the last of her money to hurt me one more time. The pressure was financial now. My savings were modest. A legal battle could wipe me out. I sat at my new kitchen table, the lawsuit papers spread before me. I wouldn't be bullied. I called Martin back. What's the fastest way to make this lawsuit meaningless? If the land is no longer an asset you control, her claim to its value collapses, he said. The donation to the county, if finalized, would do exactly that. I called the county clerk. The council meeting was in 3 days. I marked the date on my calendar. I just had to hold on for 3 more days. The next morning, I got a call from the detective. Derek Mills, wanting a better deal, was now claiming Carol had specifically said, "Make sure no one is home." It was a lie. I felt it in my bones. Mills was covering his own guilt. But it would inflame the case. The DA would have to pursue stronger charges. The trial would become a media circus. I would be at the center of it. My life now felt like just waiting for the next blow. I went for a walk by the lake to clear my head. An older man was fishing. He nodded at me. "Heard about your troubles," he said kindly. "The park idea is a good one. This town needs more good things." Word traveled fast. His simple support was a balm. When I returned to my apartment building, my landlord was in the lobby. "Mrs. Evans, a woman was here asking for you. Said she was press. I didn't tell her your unit number?" He looked concerned. The vultures were circling. The quiet resolution I sought was getting louder and messier. I thanked him and went upstairs, locking the door behind me. I leaned against it, listening to the silence. The council meeting was in 48 hours. I just had to get there. The day of the county council meeting, I dressed carefully. I arrived early and sat in the back. The agenda was long. My donation was item 14B. I listened to arguments about potholes, my hands cold. Just before my item, Carol's lawyer walked in and sat across the aisle. He gave me a thin smile. He was here to object. When they called 14B, I went to the podium. I gave my name and my wish to donate the lakefront as a public park in memory of my granddaughter. I kept my voice steady. The chairman thanked me and asked for public comment. Carol's lawyer stood. "My client, Carol Evans, who holds joint ownership, objects. She has filed a civil suit. Accepting this now could involve the county in costly litigation. A murmur went through the room. The county attorney, a weary man, advised they typically table matters with active ownership disputes. My heart sank. This was Carol's plan, to stall. "May I speak?" I asked. The chairman nodded. I looked at the counsel. "My sister is in jail, charged with setting the fire that killed Lily. This lawsuit is her last attempt to control that land, to sell it. I want to give it to the community. Please don't let her manipulation from a jail cell decide this." The room went quiet. Carol's lawyer flushed. "Her property rights are absolute." After a whispered consultation, the chairman spoke. "Mrs. Evans, we are sympathetic, but the law is clear. We must table this until the civil matter is settled." It was a setback. I nodded, thanked them, and returned to my seat. Carol's lawyer left without a glance. I drove home, the earlier victory feeling distant. As I parked, my phone rang. It was Adia Ruiz. "Ellen, a development. Carol's lawyer offered a plea deal. She'll plead guilty to reckless endangerment and fraud, serve a minimum of 10 years, in exchange for dropping the manslaughter charge. She also agrees to drop the civil suit." I gripped the wheel. So she gets to say Lily's death wasn't her fault? Legally, it would be an accident during another crime. The DA is inclined to accept. The manslaughter charge is hard to prove. This guarantees she does time. I saw the logic, but it felt like a compromise. And the land? The suit would be dismissed. The land would be yours, free and clear. You could do what you want. The park was possible again, but the price was letting Carol off the hook for my greatest loss. I had 24 hours to give my opinion. I sat in the dark car, torn between the practical need for closure and the burning need for full accountability. I didn't sleep a wink, pacing and thinking over the deal. 10 years was a long sentence for a woman Carol's age, a real punishment. But it was for the fraud, not for Lily. Lily's name would stay clear. Come morning, I called my son-in-law Martin over coffee. He was practical. "A trial's a gamble," he said. "This ends the fight over the land. It lets you move forward." Moving on felt impossible, but the idea of a park felt right. A permanent, happy place. That was a legacy Lily would like more than a long, bitter trial. I called Adia Ruiz and agreed not to block the deal. "I want it in writing," I said. "She drops all claims to the land and never contacts me again." Ruiz said that was standard. She told me I could give a victim impact statement at the sentencing. The deal was about the law. My statement would be about the truth. The next month was quiet. I met with the parks director. We planned for benches, a swing set, a path, and a plaque for Lily. The donation papers were ready, waiting for the lawsuit to be dismissed. The sentencing was in a smaller courtroom. Carol stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, head down, and pleaded guilty. The judge asked if I wished to speak. I stood and walked to the lectern, looking at the judge, not at Carol. "Your Honor," I began, "my granddaughter Lily was 12. She loved the stars and cherry pie. She was staying with me last summer. Because of my sister's greed and a hired man's carelessness, Lily died in a fire meant to scare me. This deal calls it reckless endangerment. I call it a choice. My sister chose money over family. Now she loses both. All I have left is my memory of Lily and the hope that the land where she died can become a place for other families to find joy. That's the only justice I can see." My voice wavered only at the end. The judge was quiet a moment. Then he spoke sternly to Carol about her calculated actions and the profound loss. He sentenced her to 12 years. Deputies led her away. She never looked at me. Afterward, Adia Ruiz gave me the filed dismissal of the civil suit. It was finally over. The following week, I stood before the county council. With the lawsuit gone, the vote to accept the land donation was unanimous. I signed the final deed. On a cool, clear morning, I went to the property one last time before the work crews arrived. I placed a single white stone near the old oak tree. "It's done, Lily," I whispered. The lake was calm as glass. I turned, walked to my car, and didn't look back. I had a park to help plan, and a quiet apartment waiting. The fight was finished, and I had decided what to make from what was left. The park planning meetings were a bittersweet routine. Today, as I reviewed landscaping blueprints in the community centre, a volunteer handed me a certified letter. The return address was from a law firm I didn't recognize. My hands went cold. I excused myself and sat on a bench outside. The letter stated that David Evans, Carol's son, was filing a petition to overturn the land donation. He claimed that as Carol's only heir, he was entitled to her half interest, and that my donation constituted waste of a joint asset. He demanded a hearing in probate court in 14 days. The lawyer requested I contact him immediately to avoid unnecessary litigation. I folded the letter carefully. Carol was in prison, but her poison had found a new delivery method. David. I hadn't seen him in years. He was in his 40s now, always a quiet boy who grew into a man Carol said was struggling. This was her last weapon, wielded from her cell. I drove straight to Martin's office. He read the letter, his expression grim. He has standing to challenge the disposal of his mother's potential interest. But since Carol was convicted of a crime that led to the property's destruction, her moral claim is weak. However, legally, it could tie up the park for months or years. Can he win? I asked. Unlikely, but he can cause delay and expense. The county might get cold feet. We need to respond before the hearing date. Martin advised sending a formal rebuttal and requesting a mediation meeting. See if his grievance is real or just about money. I spent that evening digging through old photos. I found one of David as a teenager, standing awkwardly with Carol and me at a family barbecue. He had a kind smile. What had Carol told him about me? That I stole her inheritance? I needed to know his motive. The next morning, I called the law firm. I spoke to a paralegal and agreed to a mediation session in 1 week before the court hearing. I felt the familiar pressure return, a weight on my chest. The park plans, Lily's memorial, everything was stalled again. I decided not to wait. I had David's last known address from an old Christmas card list. It was an apartment in a city 2 hours away. I packed a bag, told my neighbor I'd be back by evening, and started driving. I didn't know what I would say, but I had to look him in the eye, just as I had with Carol. I needed to see if there was a man I could reason with, or just another person carrying her envy. The drive was long. I rehearsed speeches in my mind. As I pulled into the parking lot of a modest apartment complex, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stay away from my client. Any direct contact will be used against you." It was from David's lawyer. I turned off the phone, took a deep breath, and got out of the car. The door to Building B, apartment 204, was just ahead. I could see a shadow moving behind the curtain. He was home. I knocked on the door of apartment 204. It opened a crack after a long minute. David looked tired and older than his photos. "Aunt Ellen," he said, recognizing me. "You shouldn't be here. My lawyer said—" "I got your text," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm here as family. May I come in for 5 minutes?" He hesitated, then let me in. The apartment was neat but sparse. He didn't offer me a seat. "I'm doing what I have to," he said. "Mom's share of the land should come to me. That park idea throws away its value." "It creates value for the community," I said. "And it's in Lily's memory. You remember your cousin Lily?" His face tightened. "Of course. It was a terrible accident. But that doesn't change property law." He sounded like he was reciting lines. "The Lakeside Resort Group made a new, generous offer for the land. They'll settle for Mum's half. You could still get something for your half. We both win." So that was it. The resort company was back, using David. They must have contacted him through Carol in prison. "David, that company wanted to build a hotel right where Lily died. Your mother went to jail over that land. Are you sure about working with them?" He looked away. "I have debts. Student loans, medical bills. This is a way out. Mum wants this for me." He pulled a folded letter from a drawer. It was Carol's handwriting on prison stationery. It read, "Don't let Ellen sentimentalize our family's future away. Claim what is yours." I handed it back, my heart sinking. "My lawyer says I have a good case," David said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Lawsuits are expensive and slow," I said. "The resort will drag it out. Legal fees will eat most of any money. The park donation is almost complete. The county will name it after Lily. That land will be protected forever. Isn't that worth more than a paycheck from the people who hurt our family?" He was silent, studying the floor. I saw the conflict in him. He wasn't a bad man, just a desperate one being used. "I need to think," he muttered. "I understand," I said. "But the hearing is in less than 2 weeks. If you proceed, you'll be fighting me, the county, and public opinion. The local paper is already writing about the park." I stood to leave. "There might be another way to help with your debts, without selling that land." He didn't ask for details. He just nodded and closed the door softly. As I walked to my car, I noticed a sleek silver sedan at the end of the lot. A man in a suit was watching me, talking on his phone. He didn't look away. The resort company was watching. They had invested in David, and I had just become a problem. Back home, I called my son-in-law, Martin. I told him the resort was funding David to get Carol's share of the land. "We need to cut off their influence." "How?" Martin asked. I had 2 ideas. First, we show the resort's pursuit of the land was a factor in Carol's crime. That might discredit them publicly and give David a reason to step back. Second, David mentioned debts. What if we set up a small educational fund in our granddaughter Lily's name? It could help with his student loans. A family legacy, not a bribe. Martin was cautious. Linking the resort to the crime is a legal stretch, but public opinion might work. The fund must be structured carefully. The next day I called Detective Walsh. I asked if the resort was ever mentioned in Carol's case. He said the hired arsonist had no direct link, but Carol's bank records showed a large deposit from a shell corporation 2 months before the fire. It traced back to a holding company sharing an address with the Lakeside Resort offices. It was only circumstantial, but it was something. That was enough for me. I wrote a factual letter detailing this connection and sent it to the local newspaper and the county council. I called it "The True Cost of a Hotel." I also drafted a proposal for the Lily Henderson Memorial Scholarship to help local graduates. I listed David as a potential advisory member, honoring his mother's family. It included a small annual stipend for his role. I sent it to David with a note. "This is a way to build something good from our loss. Your mother's name can be part of it." 2 days later, the paper ran a short article about questions raised regarding the resort. That afternoon, David called. He sounded tense. They told me to ignore your scholarship. They said they'd double their offer if I signed tonight. They have a notary coming. David, don't sign in haste, I urged. Talk to your own lawyer. Ask them for full payment up front. See what they say. He agreed to delay. Soon after, Martin called. The resort's lawyer contacted me. They're accusing you of defamation and interfering. They demand a retraction and for you to stop contacting David. I stated facts from police records, I said. Hold tight, Martin advised. That evening, my doorbell rang. It was the man in a suit from the parking lot. He handed me an envelope. Cease and desist. Your actions are jeopardizing a legitimate deal. He left. The letter was full of legal threats, giving me 48 hours to respond. The resort was trying to scare me silent, but I'd been scared by experts. This just made me angrier. I didn't sleep, reading the cease and desist letter under the lamplight. Their threat was clear: back off or face a costly lawsuit. But I remembered Martin's advice. Often, these letters are bluffs. I called him first thing in the morning. Don't respond directly, he said. I'll handle it. We'll file a response denying the allegations and pointing out their harassment. More importantly, we need David's decision. I waited all day, my phone silent. The park committee meeting was that afternoon. I went, feeling distracted. The project manager asked about the legal challenge. I told them we were resolving it. The trust in their eyes was a responsibility I couldn't let down. As I drove home, my phone finally rang. It was David. He sounded defeated. I met with their notary. The offer changed. Now it's a smaller amount, with payments over 5 years. They said once the land is tied up in court, its value drops, so this is the best I'll get. They pressured me to sign. I didn't. I told them I needed to think. Good, I said. They're revealing what they're really like. David, come to my apartment tomorrow. Let's talk face to face. No lawyers, just aunt and nephew. He agreed. The next morning, I baked a coffee cake, something I hadn't done in months. David arrived, looking weary. He sat at my kitchen table. Why are you doing all this? He asked. For a park? For Lily, I said simply, and for peace. That land caused nothing but greed and pain. I want it to give joy. I want you to be part of that, not used by people who see you as a tool. I slid the scholarship proposal across the table. This is real. The county has already pledged some matching funds. You could help choose the recipients. It's a legacy, David, not a quick check that vanishes. He read the document slowly. The resort said you were manipulating me with sentiment. I'm offering you a choice, I said. Withdraw your petition. Let the park go forward. In return, you'll have a seat on the scholarship committee, a small annual honorarium, and the knowledge that you helped create something good. And I will help you find a financial advisor to deal with your debts legally. No resort strings attached. He was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll call my lawyer and withdraw the petition. But you have to promise the resort won't come after me for backing out. I'll have Martin draw up a release, I said. We'll protect you. As David left, he almost smiled. Lily would have liked a park, he said softly. It was the first kind words he'd spoken. I felt a surge of hope. But an hour later, Martin called. The resort's lawyer filed an emergency motion to intervene in the probate case, claiming David is being coerced by you. They're asking the court to appoint a guardian ad litem for David's interest. Hearing is tomorrow at 9 a.m. The resort wasn't giving up. They were using the legal system to paint me as the villain and David as a vulnerable victim. I had to be in that courtroom, and I had to show the judge the truth. The courtroom was cold and formal. David was there with his lawyer. The resort's legal team, two sharp-dressed attorneys, sat at another table. I sat behind David, with Martin beside me. The judge, a woman with stern glasses, listened as the resort's lawyer argued that I had unduly influenced David to abandon his legitimate claim, and that the donation was a scheme to devalue the asset. They presented the cease and desist letter and my scholarship proposal as evidence of manipulation. Then it was Martin's turn. He stood calmly. Your Honor, my client is a grieving grandmother who has donated her land to the public good after a horrific crime. Mr. Evans is a grown man who made a decision after considering all options. The resort company, which has a financial interest in stopping this park, is attempting to manufacture conflict where none exists. We have here a signed withdrawal of petition from Mr. Evans. David's lawyer confirmed the withdrawal. The judge looked at David. Mr. Evans, is this your voluntary decision? David stood, his voice clear. Yes, Your Honor. I was initially misled by promises from the resort. My aunt offered a way to honor my cousin's memory and help my community. I choose that. The resort's lawyer jumped up. He's been coerced. We request the court to consider the financial pressure he's under. The judge peered over her glasses. What financial pressure? From whom? Martin seized the moment. From the resort, Your Honor. We have evidence of a suspicious payment to Mr. Evans's mother, the convicted felon, prior to the arson. We believe this company's relentless pursuit of the land contributed to the tragedy. He handed her a folder with the bank record information. The judge reviewed it silently. The courtroom was tense. She looked at the resort's lawyers. This is a probate matter about a land donation. Your client's business interests are not a primary concern here. Mr. Evans has withdrawn his petition. The donation to the county appears valid and is in process. Motion to intervene denied. Case dismissed. She banged her gavel. It was over. The resort's lawyers gathered their papers, giving me angry looks. David let out a long breath. Outside, David shook my hand. Thank you, Aunt Ellen. I'll help with the scholarship. He walked away, looking lighter. Martin hugged me. You did it. The park is clear. I drove to the lakefront property. Survey stakes now marked where the playground would go. The county sign read, Future Site of Lily's Landing Park. I touched the rough wood of the stake. My phone buzzed. It was a call from the County Parks Department. Mrs. Evans, we have a small issue. The environmental review found some protected plant species on the far edge of the property. We may need to adjust the layout slightly. Can you meet next week to discuss? I smiled. A problem about plants, not people. Of course, I said. I'll be there. I looked out at the calm water. The big battles were won. Now came the careful work of building something new, one stake at a time. The park planning moved from battles over paper to the quiet reality of dirt and roots. The environmental issue was simple. A patch of milkweed, vital for monarch butterflies, grew where the planned walking path turned. The county botanist, a young woman named Chloe, showed me the plants. We can curve the path here, she said, sketching in the air. It'll make the view of the lake even better. I agreed. This was the kind of problem I welcomed. I visited the site every few days, watching the slow progress. Bulldozers had cleared the charred remains of the house, leaving only the old oak and the milkweed patch untouched. The air smelled of fresh earth, not ash. One morning, a certified letter arrived. It was from the State Corrections Department. Carol had submitted a request for a compassionate release hearing, citing early-stage osteoporosis and depression. She was asking to be transferred to a minimum security facility or home confinement due to failing health. My input as the victim was requested. The old anger flared, hot and sharp. She was trying to slip out early. I called the victim advocacy office. The counsellor explained that given Carol's age and non-violent official charges, such requests were sometimes granted. My statement opposing it would carry significant weight. I spent the day in a quiet fury, pulling weeds from my patio garden with more force than needed. Did she deserve compassion? She had shown none. Yet the idea of fighting her again, of spending my energy on keeping her locked up, felt like letting her back into my life. I wasn't sure I had the fight left in me. The next day, I drove to the prison, not to visit Carol, but to meet with the hearing officer. It was a small administrative office. I handed over my written statement. It was brief. I stated that Carol's actions led to a death, that she had shown no remorse to me, and that early release would cause me continued distress. I did not exaggerate. I stated facts. The officer, a tired-looking man, nodded. This will be part of the packet for the review board. They meet next month. As I left, walking through the parking lot, I saw a transport van arrive. For a fleeting second, I thought I saw a glimpse of grey hair behind the tinted window. I got in my car and drove straight to the lake. I sat on a folding chair I kept in the trunk, watching the water. Holding on to hate was tough on me. I had to decide if I would stay angry through the hearing, or if I could move on and accept the punishment she got. The park was being built. That was my answer to Carol. Maybe that was all the answer I needed to give. A month passed in a rhythm of quiet routines. The park's skeleton took shape. Concrete footings for benches, the curved gravel path, the frame of a small gazebo by the oak tree. I volunteered to help choose the playground equipment. Sitting with catalogues at my kitchen table, I picked a swing set with 2 regular swings and 1 adaptive seat, and a slide the colour of a sunbeam. The letter from the parole board came on a Tuesday. Carol's request for compassionate release had been denied. The board cited the nature of the crime and the victim impact statement. She would serve her full term. I read the line 3 times, then filed the letter away in a drawer. I felt no triumph, only a final and sure feeling that it was over. The following week, I received a different kind of letter. It was from David, a handwritten note, not a legal document. "Aunt Ellen," it began, "I've started counselling. It's helping me see a lot of things clearer, about Mom, about me. I'm sorry for the trouble I caused. I'd still like to be part of the scholarship committee if you'll have me. I was thinking we could name one of the park benches after Mom, not to honour her but to acknowledge the whole story, so people remember that choices matter. Maybe that's foolish. Let me know. David." I held the paper, touched by its raw honesty. A bench for Carol, a place to sit and reflect on the consequences of envy. It was a brave thought. I called him. We talked for 20 minutes, about nothing important and everything. I told him a bench was a good idea. We agreed to discuss it with the park committee. The day of the park's official groundbreaking ceremony arrived. It was a cool, bright morning. A small crowd gathered. County officials, neighbours, Chloe the botanist, David, and me. The mayor said a few words about community and healing. Then she handed me a shiny shovel. "Would you like to do the honours, Ellen?" I stepped forward to the ribbon-marked spot. I pushed the shovel into the soft earth. It went in easily. I turned the first scoop. The soil was dark and rich. People applauded softly. I looked up and saw David smiling, a real smile. I saw Mr. Henderson from the old neighbourhood nodding. I saw the lake, calm and endless. After the crowd dispersed, I stayed, sitting on a temporary bench. The sounds of construction were quiet today. I could hear birds. A monarch butterfly, orange and black, fluttered over the protected milkweed. It landed, its wings opening and closing slowly. It was just a butterfly, going about its life. But in that simple moment, on the land where so much had happened, I felt a sense of peace come over me. The fight was truly over. Now there was only the waiting and the building. The new park opened quietly in the spring, just as the first wildflowers began to bloom. A simple wooden sign at the entrance read, "Lily's Landing." Below, in smaller letters, it added, "A place for peace." There was no grand ceremony with ribbons or speeches, just the gentle unclipping of a chain across the driveway. I arrived early that very first morning, as a soft, white mist was still rising like a breath off the calm surface of the lake. Everything was perfectly in place, just as the planners had promised. The cheerful blue and yellow playground stood empty and waiting for its first shouts of joy. The smooth, curved gravel path was neatly lined with young native shrubs, their leaves still damp with dew. And under the generous branches of the old oak tree, two benches faced the water. One had a small brass plaque I knew by heart. For Lily, who loved the sky. The other, placed a few thoughtful yards away, simply read, "In reflection of choices made." I settled onto Lily's bench, the wood cool and firm beneath me. Soon, the rising sun began to warm my shoulders through my light cardigan. The first visitors arrived then, a young family with a little girl in a bright red jacket who immediately broke into a run, heading straight for the swings. Her clear, delighted laughter echoed across the open space, and to my surprise, the sound didn't hurt my heart as it once might have. Instead, it seemed to soften something inside me, like a knot gently coming loose. More people drifted in as the morning grew older. An older couple walking a slow, plump dachshund, and a man with a fishing rod heading for the new public dock the county had added. This was it. This was exactly what I, and so many others, had fought so hard for. Not just a static memorial, but a living, breathing place where simple, ordinary joy was possible again. The long conflict was over. Carol was in prison, held accountable for her actions. My son David was doing well, actively helping to manage the community scholarship fund in Lily's name, which had already received its first two promising applicants. The big resort company had finally, and quietly, withdrawn its interest in our lakeshore. My own life in my cozy apartment had settled into a smaller, comforting rhythm full of simple pleasures. My weekly book club, tending to my container garden on the patio, and long, silly video calls with my great-nephews. I come to the park most days now. Sometimes I bring a novel and read a chapter. Other times I just sit and watch the light dance on the water and the people come and go. I think of my granddaughter Lily often, of course, but the sharp, jagged pain of her loss has slowly faded, transforming into a quiet, loving memory that feels as permanent and reassuring as the plaque on the bench beside me. One particularly still afternoon, I noticed a teenager sitting all alone on the reflection bench, just staring at the lake, his expression so thoughtful and serious. I didn't know his story. Perhaps a tough exam, a first heartbreak, or just the weight of growing up. He didn't know mine either. And I realized that was the whole, beautiful point of this place. The land held our collective past, our pains and our history, but now it also gave space for children to play and butterflies to flutter over the wildflowers. Finally, I stood up, brushed a few stray oak leaves from my pants, and began the slow walk back to my car. I had a pot roast simmering away in the slow cooker at home, filling the whole apartment with a savory, welcoming smell. My dear neighbour Barbara was coming over for dinner, and we had much to catch up on. As I drove away, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror. The park was full of golden afternoon light and gentle movement. It was no longer a burden I had to carry, or a cause I had to fight for. It was just a beautiful, peaceful place by the lake. And finally, at long last, so was I.